Well, good morning, everybody. Our first map looks back over the last weekend at total precipitation. And of course, a lot of attention was given to the severe weather outbreak that happened throughout the Mid-South. Storms began to rip through here on Saturday, and as we talked about on Friday, just had the right ingredients to be kind of a multi-hazard threat. Now, unfortunately, because of the way this storm system evolved, there were several supercell thunderstorms that are out ahead of a main line of storms that did produce numerous tornadoes. Now, as you look at this, we can see how that frontal boundary eventually lined itself out in the overnight hours yesterday up the East Coast. And we're going to be watching for where this system kind of tails off today, delivering some decently heavy snows into parts of kind of the interior here of New England, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. At the same time, while that was happening, remember on Friday we had a system come through dropping some snow into this area, some lighter rain that came through here, and then the Pacific Northwest continues to take on a lot of onshore flow and continues to have flooding problems. But just thinking about the severe weather outbreak that happened here, I'm going to show you. These are kind of the hail streaks we observed with radar. So just want to remind you that I know a lot of the news emphasis was on the damage and destruction that was due to the over 25 tornadoes and the lives lost because of that. We can see here, though, too, these storms were producing quite a bit of large hail. I can show you one Twitter feed, National Weather Service at Memphis. This is a public feed, so I can kind of show you what they've put out. And this is just some of the hail in Mississippi. So just a reminder that these storms did produce a wide range of damaging weather. Now, if you want to see the full reports, the red are the tornado reports, the green are hail, and the blue here would represent where there were strong straight line winds. And this is only Saturday. Remember, this moved over to the Carolinas on Sunday. So just an extremely rough weekend overall. Now, I did pull up one other map to kind of just cap what happened, and this is just a look back at the 24-hour time period ending late yesterday on Sunday. And from Saturday to Sunday, we saw over 500,000 cloud-to-ground lightning strikes out of this one system. That's what you're seeing here. They're all color-coded by age, so the red being the first here, the white last night when I made the map. That's what you had. So let's try to put this one into context, okay? So I want to show you a graphic that starts at the beginning of December and goes through the 10th. And what it's showing us here is precipitation ranks by climate district. I love showing you these maps. I find them very instructive. If we look for a benefit of what just happened, we did bring in rainfall into an area that had been very dry. Parts of the Tennessee Valley, the Mid-South, unfortunately, did come through with severe weather. But I also want to use this map to really illustrate how wet the Northwest has been. So 131 years worth of data in terms of the start of a December for precip. This has been just, a lot of single digits up here, and that's why we've seen so much flooding. I did measure in a few places over 15 inches of rain since the start of the new year. So this just really kind of hones in on what's happening here. Now, where will the biggest changes in this map be coming in the near term and both the longer term? In the near term, I'm going to be watching New Mexico, Colorado, parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. You'll see why in a few moments as this new system emerges later this week and tries to move along the Gulf Coast. I'll be watching California in the longer range as we approach Christmas and beyond for getting some stronger onshore flow. There's a really interesting story to be made there. I'll show you that in a second. But I'm having problems with the rest of the country getting its moisture. And that's going to be critical to this upcoming pattern to relieve any sort of drought before we finish a year. But I do want to point out real quickly before we go away from the Northwest, that there was additional snow that came through over the weekend. You can see the snowfall totals in the Northern Plains, but focus over here because remember we put in 30 to 40 inches of snow, then hit it with a bunch of rain as things got quite mild, and then they did add some more snow at the end of this. So this isn't quite the way we want to see snow adding up in the mountains. I understand it's moisture, but we want to just get a good cold regime, pack in that snow so we can really just watch it accumulate through the entirety of winter. Okay, from here, let's take a look at the latest drought monitor. I brought this up on Friday, but I want to kind of add some context to it because over the last 6 weeks, if we ask how much the drought monitor has changed and where it's changed, we can look at this map. So it's a class change map. Major improvements in the Northwest, right along the border here. You can see coming out of Texas into parts of the plains improvement. But then you notice this larger area here and some pockets throughout the Midwest that saw degradation and drought. Same thing for parts of kind of the high plains here. Now, there will be major improvement here and also some improvement here coming up, but I think we're going to see degradation of drought in the midsection of the country and even parts of the Mid-South as this pattern evolves here in the coming 3 or 4 weeks. So what are we dealing with? Well, this was overnight last night into early this morning. This is kind of the tail end of this system we've been watching. and it's delivering rain up the coast, and there's a tough boundary right in through here where there's a rain to snow shift. We're going to watch the parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine pick up some more snow today. Then take a look at this weak frontal boundary sliding through Montana. That's going to bring down some snow as well, but there's a bigger kind of outlook for snow down here in the southern plains I'll be looking forward to seeing. And then California, we're going to have to watch very carefully. So our all hazards weather map this morning at 6 a.m. as I was recording. Winter storm warnings. Actually, it's going to be back further to New York. Forgive me, I didn't mention that. But winter storm warnings here, kind of lining the northern edge of this track. Flood watches, flood warnings out nearly everywhere else. We've got frost advisories down here in southern Georgia and Alabama. Freeze warnings in southern Georgia and Florida. Freeze warnings here and also in California, and you have the winter weather advisories coming through parts of the northern Rockies. Some pretty dense fog this morning in parts of the northern plains, getting to the upper Midwest as well. So if we just kind of jump right into the models here, let's take a look at what the high-res NAM does with this. So there's our heavy snow here, some lake effect behind it. There's our frontal boundary sliding through, delivering some snow to Montana and parts of Idaho. And we get toward, the overnight hours tonight into tomorrow. There's a weaker system that brings a frontal boundary through that provides some more snow showers, Ontario, Quebec, and the Great Lakes here. But what we'll be watching for late in the time period is going to be brewing right down here in Texas. It's going to start on Wednesday, but it's really going to be cranking on Thursday. And we're going to focus in on that one first. Most of the rest of the country gets through this week with not a whole lot going on here. So what are we watching? We're actually going to be watching a pair of high over low trough ridge patterns develop over the next few days. So let me take you back and show you them. So as we play through the rest of the day, here's that little, kind of called a clipper that moves through that brings the snow on the southern side, but we're watching this. You see a high over low is where the jet stream goes over the top. The speed is strong enough to bring it over the top, completing kind of a circuit over here while looping or leaving off a low to the bottom. So the high, the ridge, the low on the bottom. Now this type of pattern is slow to evolve. That's what you need to remember, because through Tuesday into Wednesday and Thursday, I'm already to Thursday, that low went from here to there. And it's going to take another 3 to 4 days to get all the way over to here. So you can see the speed of the jet stream went over the top, brought in the warmth back into this area, but the low that's cut off to the south takes a long time. So Wednesday, Thursday is going to be the beginning of this system. And then, as we play forward into Friday and Saturday, I'm watching another high over low. So here's the next one, and there's the low to its south. Now that's pretty far offshore. Had we moved this another, let's call it 500 to 800 miles closer to California, this would have been a major precipitation producer for California, but it's pretty far offshore. So by the way, we're on Saturday. Here's the low right down here, and we just keep playing this through Sunday. It's going to get down here and kind of build on we call this a baroclinic zone, where there's strong temperature and temperature and moisture contrast, which leads to a pressure gradient that kind of crisscrosses it, and that tends to lead to the development of lows right in this area. So I'm all the way out to Monday already, and this low today is here. So this is going to take a week to cross the country, and then we're going to see it lingering in this area, potentially producing multiple days of heavier rain. So snow first here, and some rain coming into the southern plains, and we're going to watch for this one to sneak across. Now, outside of that, I've already got you out here almost 10 days in the forecast pattern. This is my kind of the Achilles heel to this pattern. We see that through the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, there is this Aleutian low or this Alaskan low. And yeah, they're going to be piling up the snow in Alaska. But if you've got that there, it's hard to bring in active systems across the United States. I'm talking about the ones that jump over the Rockies and race across. And it's also hard to bring in any sort of colder air. So when do we start to see this changing? It may not be until Christmas. And I'm going to show you what's about to change out here in a big way that's going to help initiate the movement of this away from Alaska and into the West Coast, specifically into California. So if we take a look here at what we've been dealing with, this is a map that goes from the beginning of November up until the end of last week. And what it's showing you here are jet stream level anomalies. So we're looking for places where the winds were faster or in a different direction from normal. And what I'm going to tell you is there was just no anomalously strong winds across the Pacific Ocean, just nothing. But you know that we've been watching something, right? We've been watching this very cold air, which began in Europe, moved into Russia, and is now moving over to eastern Russia, and the influence that it's going to be having on the way that the jet stream emerges from Japan. Now, it helps that there's strong thermal contrast. There's cold air, very cold air here, and very mild air to the south. So that sets up what we call our thermal wind relationship. And I mentioned this a bit on Friday, but basically what it means is warmer atmospheres are less dense. They're thicker. They have higher heights. Okay, colder atmospheres are more compact. So what you end up getting is higher heights here, and you get lower heights aloft there. So there's a huge slope in the thickness of the jet stream. And the reason why the jet stream exists based on the thermal wind relationship is because of that slope. Now there's an added factor to this. The MJO is going to come out of here and move its way over into the Western Pacific. And what it's going to do once it gets there, I'll just show it to you. So it's right now over the maritime continent. So it's north of Australia, and it's going to be moving into the Western Pacific. Now, the movement here into the Western Pacific, just off, kind of just east of Indonesia, means where it's going to be exhausting its heat aloft, it's like right here. So can you see these arrows that kind of diverge out of this area? So I want to put this all together for you. Very cold here, very warm there, jet stream comes out. It's then got momentum and heat added to it from the south out of the convection in the tropics here. And that just helps it, well, just continue and to extend and move across the open Pacific Ocean. And the net effect of all of it is this. Now watch, keep your eye right here. We brought this up briefly last week, but now we've seen the models evolve so that by this weekend, getting into early next week, this is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, this is Thursday the 21st, we're now fully into astronomical winter here. And then by the 24th, 25th of December, so let's just stop this on Christmas morning. Could this be the kind of the big present that's going to be coming toward California? I mean, that is a massive jet extension. And it's impressive to see what this could be carrying in terms of moisture and momentum into the West Coast and what that could mean for West Coast precipitation going forward. I got to be honest, is it El Nino-like? Yeah, it is. Is it, is it anomalously elongated and stretched? It is. This is going to be an impressive event we're going to be watching. Now, before I go any farther, I want to take you back to this graphic. Please remember that I'm going to tell you now that the MJO seems to be stalling right here rather than making this full sweep around over to phase 8 and 1. I'm going to come back to why that's important in the longer range forecast in just a few moments. But as it stands, most of the next 10 days will be waiting for kind of Christmas to get here to see that jet extension arrive. Most of the West Coast is drier. We have one system here that's part of that cutoff low that just does this. The Mid-South, the Midwest dry, and what you've got up here, this is happening right now. So we are very bland in our pattern for a while. So what I want you to do is frame this particular image with respect to other things like our root zone soil moisture. So as you can see, very dry Midwest, Mid-South. I mean, that's hitting this same area that has been extremely dry for a while. And our subsurface soil moisture, this needs correcting, and it needs correcting very, very quickly. Well, really between now and April. Otherwise, we're going to have a major story here going into 2024 to be talking about. Because the Mississippi's still low. This morning it was 6.59 feet below low stage and not making the kind of speedy recovery that we have all kind of hoped and prayed for here. So with that, let's take a look at what our models are suggesting. GFS left, European right. So we've talked already about what's happening through Tuesday into Wednesday. So we both models here have the same low going up over the Hudson Bay, bringing in some snow to the Great Lakes. Our attention's going to go here. Ready? This is Wednesday, 12 a.m., playing through the day on Wednesday, getting it to 6 p.m. Now watch, this is going to be early Thursday morning, Thursday, 6 a.m., Thursday noon, and then Thursday, 6 p.m. So notice there's potential for some very heavy snow right where New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Colorado meet, right in through this area. This is now Thursday evening. We're going to watch that low curl east. So could it be bringing some snow to the panhandles? It could. Could it bring heavy rain and the risk for some strong storms into Texas? Yes. But then the models do split a bit on what happens after this. So you know there's this cutoff low here in the jet stream. Well, there's this ribbon of vorticity that sneaks out ahead of it, and the GFS wants to bring it through this area. The European model leaves it way farther to the south. And just as we typically see, the GFS is the faster of the two models. Ready? This is Saturday, getting into Saturday afternoon and evening. And by Saturday evening, notice how the GFS just ripped across parts of Florida into the southeast, very heavy rainfall. Now, nowhere to be seen in the European. Then we see that the GFS wants to take this right up through the coastal parts of the Carolinas. The European model still has it lingering back over parts of the Delta down here, lower Mississippi River Valley. So when does it finally move east? Well, in the intervening days on Sunday to Monday, this GFS takes a system straight up the East Coast. European model still has it lingering in this area. Now we're out here pretty far. We're already out to next Monday in the forecast here. And you notice that the models are trying to increase some activity in the west at that time. But there's really only going to be one system to be discussing this week, and it's this system that does something like this in both models. So we just need to kind of weigh out what the most accurate representation is of that precipitation. Now the potential's there for heavy rainfall. Okay, that's why we looked at this map. Notice that we could be anywhere between a half inch to 2 to 3 inches wetter than our climatological average as this comes rolling through. But what we do also need to think about is the snow on the backside. So the European model, adding it all up, so here's the heavy snow, 6 to 10 inches today, very confined to the interior. But already by Thursday, getting into Friday, we do see the potential for adding up quite a bit of snow right in this area. Let's go and just take this out a week, just to take a look at total snowfall for a week. So I will be watching this all week, this area right down here. Is it in the GFS? It is. This is a week out in the GFS. The GFS also brought a bit more snow down to the Appalachian Mountains out of the current system, but this has already moved through. But we'll watch this very carefully. But then watch what the GFS does once the Pacific Jet extends. Ready? You see the operational GFS goes out 16 days. And here we are, the 22nd of Friday. The 22nd of December. That's a Friday. And just watched California. So when the Pacific Jet does finally extend, like the 23rd, 24th, 25th, we could be really talking about a pretty sizable event. And what's interesting about the timing of this is almost the same time as it happened a year ago. Remember, California had two big, time periods where the flow was just absolutely, it was enormous just coming into California. Late December, early January, and then again in March. And so we'll watch for that. Don't use this as any sort of a perfect reference, but we'll keep an eye on that, all right? Okay, what about week 2? You can start to see all of the models increasing on the West Coast, the precipitation. That's the main story we're going to get out of the week 2 forecast, all right? Now, what I go about beyond that, if you look out here at the brand new, this was released this morning, the brand new CFSV2 runs. Yes, they're wetter in California for week 2, and then January 1 to January 7, they're wetter here. But the problem with this flow is that an extended Pacific Jet doesn't always translate into a lot of lee cyclogenesis, which means storm systems forming off the Rocky Mountains. So should we expect to get big systems in the northwest or coming off the mountains and hammering the central United States? Right now the models are saying no. Okay, this is backed up by the extended European model as well. So this goes from the 13th of December to the 13th of January. Same regions showing up drier. All right, California wetter, the South wetter, GFS extended, same setup. So we have got to get more amplitude in this flow to solve this problem of the Mid-South Midwest drought, to bring in the next round of decent precipitation into the Pacific Northwest. We've got to shake the Aleutian low completely to make all of this happen. So we're going to continue to kick this pattern down the road a bit, I think, based on some of the new model evidence. Well, what are the temperatures going to do in response? So far, December's been very mild. Now, we've had frosts that have gotten down into northern Florida, but we've been able to balance out those colder mornings with more mild days, which is why, on the whole, we're on the warmer side of average for the first part of this month of December. Now, this morning at 6 a.m. again, really cold air following the system over the weekend right here, stretching from the Dakotas into my home state of Illinois. And we did get pretty chilly temperatures down here into southern Texas as well. But as we think about where these temperatures are going to be going, frost risk over the next 7 days shown here. And then this is what our high temperatures are going to do. Today's highs, getting into tomorrow and Tuesday, and then into Wednesday. Now watch, the cold air sinks here, but remember, this is where the low is, the highs over the top of this, so very mild air is going to be coming out of Montana into the northern plains by Thursday. So there's our snow risk here with the cold enough air, but look at this very, very warm air that's going to be here. And what's ironic is I'll be back in Minnesota and South Dakota, so every time I've gone there this year, they've had very hot conditions. Let's see if I can keep that trend up this week and then beyond. Here's Friday, getting into Saturday and Sunday, just mild air flooding the country. And you know why this is the case. All of our coldest air is here. So as we play this forward out to day 5 through 10, we see it translating east a bit, but no real, there's no blocking. And extending Pacific jet does not bring in cold conditions. So as we play this all the way out past Christmas, there is just not an indicator of dropping brutally cold air across North America, even to finish the year, to be honest with you. Okay, so what about South America? This is the newest update I've got for you on the last 30 days of precipitation. The numbers represent a rank. So I only label with numbers the top 10 and the bottom 10. So you can still see a lot of single digits across Brazil's northern growing areas and the flooding that's happening south. That's going to be a narrative we'll just keep up with. But look at the direction the models trended. The European model all weekend continued to expand the area over which it was going to be dry. And they are bringing, especially into this region, temperatures that are going to go way up deep into the 90s and back into the triple digits again. You would probably estimate that Brazil's total growing area under drier than normal conditions over the next 2 weeks is looking to be something like 90 to 95%. Meanwhile, Argentina very wet. What is the GFS doing? Something very similar. Believe it or not, the GFS is a little wetter farther to the south, even though it's been our driest model for South America for a while. But again, we'd still call this about 80 to 85% of the growing area expected to be drier than normal. Again, heavier rains into Argentina with this pattern. Now, remember a while ago I said we need to pay attention to where the MJO is? I think that some of the longer range models, looking out there to that last week of this year, are trying to revive rainfall up here. And some of the dynamical reasoning for that is because the MJ was supposed to sweep into phase 8 and 1. If it stalls and doesn't get there, it removes a reason for why this moisture could be moving up into these very dry areas. All week, this will be the map to watch, the trend for the last week of December in terms of the way precipitation tries to recover farther to the north. The GFS is trying to do it as well, but it has been the drier of the two models. And this, again, the last week of this month, we'll have to watch this very, very carefully. Okay, El Nino. I think El Nino is probably at its peak right now. If it gains another maybe a couple of tenths of a degree Celsius, that's possible, but I don't see it having the ability, given the cooler water with the negative PDO to the north, the negative PMM, and then the colder water coming out of the south. I just don't see why this would just crank off and all of a sudden become an expansive El Nino going forward. Most of the models suggest it is at its peak and that it will be waning through January into February, March, and April, maybe back into neutral territory by the start of spring. And there's some concern about flipping back over to La Nina late. What's important to know about this is that I don't like the years following peaking El Ninos for the southern plains. That will be the area that I think I'll be watching most carefully as we go forward. But as it stands, we just need to do a quick review of the long-range models, and then we'll wrap this up with another international piece. Okay, December is going to be dominated by Alaska. Watch that. What I want to know is, do we really get the translation in January of losing that dominant feature and starting to develop a bit more of a pattern that's going to favor the North Atlantic Oscillation going negative? It's very positive now. You're saying, what does that mean? That means finally getting something that could crank off systems rolling in this direction. Now, the models are going after that. That's what you've got right here. But will they actually deliver the moisture? That's what we want to know. So what I've got for you here is January, February, March. Now, you can see up the East Coast, it's expected to be very active. But I want to know if we can get amplified flow enough to start to eliminate this risk of dryness where we see it right now in the next 10 days. And even though the models pulled back on the dryness in the Northwest, do we still see the continuation through the second half of winter of bringing moisture into California? So just as a review, that's January, February, March. This is February, March, April. This is March, April, May. And this is April, May, June. Now you notice that at that point, look at the high plains. This whole area that I just kind of drew this arrow on, that is going to be the area that I'm going to be concerned about. If El Nino shows up early, what we end up not getting in this area, which is a full recovery on moisture, which means we need every ounce we can get this winter, because by spring I get a little bit concerned. This would be another one of those years where you hear me say, oh, it's going to be divided on the Mississippi River. You know, if you're here in the mid-latitudes, drier on the western side compared to average and wetter on the east. That is one thought I'm having about this upcoming season. Now, what is the NMME doing? I'll show you this again. January, February, March. This is February, March, and April. This is March, April, May. Look at how much wetter things are getting here as we head towards spring. And this is April, May, June. Now, do you see the same thing happening? May, June, July, the models are trying to revive drier conditions in this area. That's a must watch as we go forward. All right, I'd like to finish this out with a couple of last pieces here. Polar vortex. Over the next 10 days, it still appears that it's going to be wobbling around, quite perturbed from its initial state, maybe breaking off into two pieces, but they are in the North Atlantic. They are in Russia. And there's a large stratospheric high that's pushing into Alaska, which underneath it has that low. So this is what's kind of ruining the pattern in the North Atlantic. It's ruining the pattern coming from Alaska. And we just want to know, when is that going to wobble its way around, connect with the tropospheric polar vortex, and get to the North America? It won't happen before the end of the year. I don't see that happening. Another thing to point out, I want to show you that Panama is still expected to be near normal or drier than normal while it's very wet in the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, and Western Atlantic with this pattern that's coming up. This just means we're continuing to see a lack of relief in the drought that's on the Panama Canal. And finally, there is a tropical system named Jasper. We talked about it last week. That's coming toward, this part of Queensland. And it looked pretty interesting yesterday on satellite. This was the Terra pass. It's called MODA, on the EOS Terra platform that passed yesterday. This morning. This was this morning. And you can see the size of that system, but it's about to deliver a lot of rain here. But look at Western Australia. This is all dust getting blown off of Western Australia from over the weekend. And it is very cold behind this front in South Australia. So I just wanted to pull out some international stuff here to kind of add a flavor here at the end of what's going on elsewhere around the world. But we'll finally stop, and I'll look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Thanks.